Hi, and welcome to the New Moon Knitting Podcast. I'm Hillary, and this is episode 8. So, hello, welcome back to the New Moon Knitting Podcast. On today's episode, I have 2 finished objects to share, as well as 3 WIPS, 2 of which I've cast on since the last time I recorded. So, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so my first finished object today are the Cozy Toes socks, which is a pattern by Christian Burkhardt. This is a free worsted weight sock pattern that is available in child and adult sizes. The pattern designer said that they were inspired to make this as a charity gift knit for people, but especially children who live in colder climates and need access to cozy, warm socks. So I thought that was such a sweet story for the inspiration. And so the pattern comes in sizes from child small to an adult large, and it's also written to accommodate worsted through bulky weight yarn. So a lot of variety available in this totally free pattern. The yarns recommended include Cascade 220 and Cascade 128 Superwash. So I ended up using Cascade Heritage in the color white, and Spinaway Farms merino sock wool. And I don't have a colorway name for this, but this sort of like blue variegated yarn. And I held these together, like I said. And so these are done in time for me to give them as a Christmas gift to my husband. So here are my finished socks. Yeah, so I think they came out really cute for the cuffs and for the toes. I held 2 strands of the Spinaway Farms together, and then for the body of the sock, what I did was I held together 1 strand of the Heritage and 1 strand of the Spinaway Farms, and so that's how I got this really nice marling effect, which I think looks really sweet. Because they're worsted weight, they knit up pretty quickly. I think they took me maybe like a week, but I was working on some other stuff at the same time. I think their worsted weight socks are a nice like house sock weight, I feel, because they will keep your feet nice and warm, but in a pinch, if you need to throw on a pair of shoes, like a pair of boots or sneakers or something, you should be able to fit them over that if you need to run outside for something. So, I have knit like really bulky socks before, and they're great for around the house, but you cannot fit a shoe over them. So that's nice. So it's a pretty standard sock construction. You start cuff down, do your cuff, do your leg. It's a heel flap pattern with what I believe is called an eye of partridge heel. So it's when you do slip stitching, but you alternate every other row where that slip stitches. So rather than getting rows, they kind of go back and forth. My only other modification is I did some ergonomic toes. So let me just hold one at a time so it's clear to see. I've talked about my ergonomic toes in the past, but basically like your standard sock decrease pattern, you're decreasing at the same rate on either side. So you end up with a point in the middle of your foot at the end of your toes. And most people's toes, they kind of slant more this way. So your big toe takes up more space for longer. And so they kind of go like that. And so I try to knit toes sometimes to accommodate that shape of the foot a little bit better. So I did finally kind of write down, because I kind of just do this like basically what feels right when I'm working on them. I've never really written down how I do ergonomic toes. And I decided this time to like really think about it and like think about what I'm doing and write it down so that like I could share with you guys, and so that I have a formula for the future so I don't have to kind of just like guess as I go. This has not been like full caveats. This has not been tested. I'm basing this just solely kind of on like, these are the only tests I have for this method, but and also it involves math, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know, like that is not my strong suit. So anyway, a bunch of grains of salt there, but I am going to walk through how I do ergonomic toes. And if you want to try them on your next pair of socks, that would be awesome. So the way I do an ergonomic toe is you start by just decreasing on the outer side of the foot. And then when you get about 2/3 of the way through your toe stitches, then you start to decrease on both sides. So because of that, if you were to just do your decreases at the top the way that you normally would in a sock, which is where you're doing your decreases every other round, your toe would be too long. You know what I mean? Like you would end up with more rows total because for the first 2/3, you were only decreasing by 1 every other round. And so you're going to end up with, more rows than you were supposed to have. So to counteract that, what I do is once I get to the split here, once I get through this like foot, big toe accommodation, I decrease on both sides on every row. And that really usually gets me to just about the same amount of rows as you would expect for your, like what's written in the pattern. So let's say you have like a standard fingering weight sock. A very common sort of cast on number for this is you would have 34 stitches on your needle when you're about to start the toe. The first thing I do, right, is you want to split that number in half because you have like a top and a bottom of your sock. So half of that is going to be 32. Then what you want to do is skip ahead to like basically the step when they tell you to Kitchener, so you can figure out how many stitches you're supposed to end up with on your needles. So for the purposes of this example, let's say my pattern says like you should have 12 stitches on either needle, on the 2 needles, when you're getting ready to Kitchener. So you should have 24 total, 12 on each. So you're starting with 32 and you're ending up with 12. In order to figure out how many rows that sock toe is going to need, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first number and subtract my second number. So 32 minus 12 is 20 rows. The reason that math works out is because if it's a regular toe, you're decreasing by 2 every other round, which basically means that the math equals 1 decrease every round, and so you'll end up with 20 rows in between those 2 numbers. All right, so now that I know I'm trying to get to 20 rounds, I'm going to take that and I'm going to multiply it by 0.66. So I want to figure out what 2/3 of that number is. So if I do it in this case and I do 20 times 0.66, I'm going to get 13.2. So I want to basically 2/3 of these total rounds is going to be about 13 rows. However, if I want to make sure that I end up with the right number of needles when I get to my decreases on either side, I want to make sure that this number is a multiple of 4. The reason for that is when I'm decreasing by 1 every other row, every 4th row is going to have an even number of stitches on the needle. So first row is just straight across. So first row, I would say like have 32. Then I would decrease by 1. So I have 31 in round 2. Round 3, I also have 31 because I'm not doing a decrease in that round. And then in row 4, I'm down to 30. So I'm back down to an even number every 4 rows. I try to just round to the closest multiple of 4. So in this case, 13.2 would round down to 12. So I would do 12 rounds in the method that I kind of just described. Knit 1 row, do 1 decrease in the way that the sock pattern describes for the top and the bottom of your sock. So if it's telling you to slip, slip, knit at the beginning of the row, slip, slip, knit, or if it's telling you to knit 2 together, but only do it on the outside of your foot, on the toe. And after that, so after you've done 12 rows, you'll end up with 26 stitches. And the way that you can figure out that number is you take your starting half round, 32, and then you take the number of rows you've knit and divide it by 2 because you're only decreasing every other round. So we've knit 12 rounds, divided by 2 is 6, 32 minus 6 is 26. That's how we can know before we start that we have 26 stitches on the needle. Then you're going to go ahead and switch and you're going to decrease on either side every other round. Again, in the method that the pattern recommends for the start and the end of each round. If you do it that way, you will end up knitting 19 rounds before you get to your, where you're supposed to bind off in like Kitchener. So you're one row off. There is like a little bit of variation. This is not a perfect system, but it does get you pretty close to that first number. So yeah, that, again, there's a lot of math there. I will try to like write this down somewhere. Maybe I'll include it in the Ravelry for this project if people want to take a look and figure out if this is something that works for them. But yeah, that's my method, and I'm sticking to it. If you have other recommendations for people who have good tutorials on how they do ergonomic toes, please share them, because I'm sure other people have figured out ways to do this that are just as good, if not better, than my solution. So yeah, that was long-winded, but yeah, these are the Cozy Toes socks by Christian Burkhardt. One little thing I want to show off, because these socks are a Christmas gift for my husband, so I was getting ready to wrap them, and this is like a little bit of a tangent, and this is not going to become like a mixed media crafts channel anytime soon. I was very proud of this. So I have really wanted to learn how to sew for a while. I took a sewing class at my local library a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed it. And I have like an old, very cheap, like secondhand sewing machine that I like to get out and dabble with sometimes, but it's been a really long time since I pulled it out, just because I've been busy with life and knitting and things. And so I thought it might be kind of fun to pull it out and try to make some reusable gift bags for Christmas. I am very aware of sort of how much like single-use stuff we have at Christmas, and so I'm always trying to find ways to like create some more reusable items that we can, use from year to year. And so I thought some fabric gift bags might be a really nice way to practice my sewing skills and also get to create some of these items that can be reused. So I found a tutorial video on how to make a really basic gift bag. It shows you how to make like 7 gift bags in the video. And so I just picked like the most simple one, basically. And I started making a couple of gift bags. So I want to show you. I got this fabric just at my local big box craft store. But yeah, it's just basically 3 seams. I don't know anything about sewing, and so like I don't even know the terminology. Hopefully 2025 goals, but yeah, I stitched down the hem here so that it wouldn't fray, and then just as you stitch along this edge, you fold a ribbon and stitch it in so that you can use it to tie up the bag, and then you can just put your gift in and tie it up. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm like stupid proud of this little bag, and I've made a couple others for gifts for Christmas. It was really fun. I'm hoping to do some more sewing and like actually learn about sewing more in the new year and how to like properly use my machine and things like that. But I was too proud not to share my little gift bag for Christmas. All right, so my next finished item is the Bear's Ear Beanie by Tara Marie. This is a free hat pattern that I actually highlighted in my free gift knitting pattern video about a month ago. And I had really wanted to try this before I made that video, but I just ran out of time. But I have 2 nephews, and I thought it would be really cute to make them a set of hats for Christmas. So the pattern calls for loops and threads impeccable tweed, which is listed as like an Aran weight yarn. And this is knit on a US 8, which is a 5mm needle. I ended up using loops and threads Charisma in the color caramel. And this is more of like a bulky, so my hat is definitely like a little bit thicker than the pattern probably recommends, but I think it will be nice and warm for my nephew. And then I knit 2 sizes. So the first size I knit was for size 1 to 2 years, and the other size I knit was for size 3 to 12 years. So this pattern is, like I said, it's free, and it's available from like infant all the way through like an adult size. So you could make these for the whole family. All right, so this is my little hat. Yeah, I think it turned out really good. The pattern doesn't come with instructions on how to add a little face, but I had seen somebody in the finished items on Ravelry had added like buttons and some like duplicate stitching for the nose. And I just thought it looked so cute. But I was a little worried about adding buttons just because my nephew is like, he's at the age where like he's putting everything in his mouth, and I could be careful with securing them, but I didn't want to run the risk of having a loose button around my nephew. So I thought I would just duplicate stitch the whole thing. I put together like a little short on my process for this, which I'll link. But basically what I did was I first used some buttons just to give me the right position for where I wanted to put the bear's face. And then I used I think it was like a little bit of leftover Cascade 220 from my Lunafold. And I held it double to kind of match the weight of the bulky hat. And yeah, I just duplicate stitched his little eyes, his little nose. And yeah, I think he turned out very cute. I have another one. I guess this one's not technically a finished object, but this one's the one for my older nephew. And I have one more ear to sew on, and I also have to do the face. Overall, this was a good pattern. I will say the free version is only available on Tara's website, but there is an option for a paid PDF version if you prefer that. But it was very easy to follow. I like that it's available in a lot of sizes. She has some really good like photos explaining how to attach the ears, which I thought was really helpful. And yeah, I think I would recommend trying this one. So yeah, that is the Bear's Ear Beanie by Tara Marie. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to WIPS. My first WIP that I have an update on is my Eurus Sweater by Eggyo Knits. This is an all-over Aran weight cabled sweater, but it's knit side to side, so sleeve to body to sleeve. The pattern uses a US 10, which is a 6mm needle, and it calls for an Aran weight yarn. I am using 2 yarns held together, so I'm using Cascade 220's Heather, and this is the color Lepidolite Heather, and I'm holding it double with this Yarn Jam Surrey Halo, which is a 65% baby Surrey alpaca, 35% silk blend. So I'm holding these 2 together, and I have made a lot of progress on my sweater, so let me share it with you. Okay, so last time I was right here on the sleeve where this little kitty cat stitch marker is. I had done most of the sleeve. Since then, I have finished the sleeve and done a decent portion of the body. I'm almost ready to split for the neck hole shaping. Yeah, so far I'm still really liking this pattern. The cabling is nice because all the cables happen on the same row, so you only have to worry about like using your cable needle every 3rd row, and then you can just do everything. I will say there was, in the pattern, the way that they want you to cast on your first body stitches. So you knit the sleeve and then you cast on stitches on either side to create the length of the body. And the first kind of set you do, they want you to do like a backward loop cast on, but somehow they want you to use those stitches to like start the next row, or at least that's how I was reading it. And there is a video, but the video is in Danish, and it shows you how to cast on the stitches, but it didn't show you kind of like what the next step was to like get them to line up. And it seems like you're supposed to start on a right side row, but every time I tried to make it work, I either ended up with like a weird loop, or I ended up with like on the wrong side of the fabric. So I ended up just like casting on stitches with backward loop the way I knew how in the number it asked for, and then just moving forward with the pattern. And I think it will be fine. This is obviously going to be seamed, but if you've knit this pattern before and you didn't get stuck at that step, can you please tell me what I was supposed to do? Because boy howdy did I get confused. So I think this is coming along. It looks really short right now, and that's because I have Xiaogu needles, but like I have their basic interchangeable set, but that only goes up to an 8. So, and really I mostly just knit on stuff that's like at an 8 or below. And so because this is a 10, I am using I have just like one set of fixed needles, and the cord is a little short, so it kind of bunches up. But if I pull it out, you can see it's a good length for a sweater. Yeah, I really like these cables. I think they look really nice. I like the way that there's like a bunch of different variations and they all play together really well. I'm loving my color combination. I think it's giving me enough definition but enough subtlety that I think it's gonna look really nice. I stupidly said in a video that I was gonna have this done for Christmas, and I don't know what I was thinking. It is coming along, and we still have many cold days ahead this winter, so I'm sure I'll have plenty of time to wear it before it warms up in the spring. So yeah, one last time for this week. This is my update on the Eurus Sweater by Eggyo Knits. Okay, so my next WIP is a new cast on since the last time I filmed, and this is the Turtleneck Sweater by Rook. I talked about this a little bit in my winter knitting plans, but this is just like a classic raglan sweater with like a big bulky turtleneck. It's knit on a US 7, which is a 4.5mm needle, and the recommended yarn is Prosper Yarn Mohair DK, so it's knit like a expected DK weight gauge. I'm using 2 yarns held together. I'm using this Amano Skinny Yana in the color Olive. So this is a single ply 100% wool yarn, and I'm holding it double with this Rising Tide Fiberco Montgomery Mohair, which is a 72% kid mohair, 28% silk, and this color is called Old Salt. So this is my progress so far. So the first thing you'll notice is I took away the turtleneck from the turtleneck sweater. I was a little afraid, the skin on my neck can be kind of sensitive, and I was a little afraid that wearing like a double layer, especially because this has mohair in it, might just be kind of too itchy for me. So what I ended up doing was more of like a mock neck. So I kind of get like a similar silhouette where I get that little bit of turtleneck, but because it's one layer, because it doesn't go as high on my neck, I think I should be able to wear it without being irritated by it. I ended up doing an Italian cast on because I knew I was going to have this very visible edging, and so I did that. I don't think the pattern calls for any particular type of cast on, but that was a little change. And then also the original pattern has this kind of cool detail that I didn't end up including, where they have you run like a single purl stitch down the middle of the sleeve. So you just get like this little kind of like faux seam down the side. I wanted something real vanilla, and so I ended up just not doing that and just doing like a regular raglan. This pattern does have good short row shaping, so I think it will fit very well. And yeah, just like pretty standard raglan increases so far. I do really love the way that these colors are working together. I think that sort of subtle variegation really gives it some real interest. And yeah, I think this color is very nice. It's also very close to the color of the sample in the Ravelry photos. So I think probably that's part of the reason I was called to these colors for this particular project. So yeah, making pretty good progress. This is definitely my I'm busy with other things, but I still want a knit project right now because it's fairly mindless. So if I'm like watching TV or something like that, this is what I pull out because I think it's my only real like stockinette project right now. But it's coming along, and yeah, I'm excited to get to wear this at some point. So yeah, last time for today, this is the Turtleneck Sweater by Rook. So my last WIP is a new cast on. I have started my Stella quilt cushion by Laura Penrose. This is a garter stitch modular knit pillow cushion that has a quilt motif to it, hence the name. The pattern is written for DK and Aran weight yarn. I am doing the DK weight version. And the recommended needle is a US 6, which is a 4mm. I am using a US 5, which is a 3.75mm, because you basically knit your first square and then you use that as a gauge swatch. And I found that my first gauge swatch was just a little too big, and it was gonna prevent me from being able to use like a standard 20 by 20 pillow insert when I was done. So going down a single needle size help me get to the right gauge. So I am using this Solitude Wool Icelandic. I'm using it in a couple of different colors. These are the 3 Icelandic wools. This is like a 2-ply, 100% Icelandic wool yarn. And so yeah, I've got like a mustardy yellow, like a pink, and a peachy color. I'm also using this from Tidal Yarns, which is another 2-ply yarn. Believe it's 100% wool, and it's like this kind of cranberry color. And then I'm finishing it off by using this Cascade Eco Plus Hemp in this off-white color for the background and for the back of the pillow and everything else. So I have finished my first row of quilt squares. So yeah, I have not really done modular knitting before, so this has been a really fun pattern to work on. So basically you're doing just like corner to corner garter stitch squares, but depending on which square you're in, you work it in a particular direction and you change colors, or you don't. The pattern has instructions basically for like 4 different ways that you make the square, depending on which square you're on. And at first I felt like kind of overwhelmed trying to figure out which one. But like, honestly, once you get into it and you've done a couple, it makes a lot more sense, and you kind of get used to like the basic rhythms of each square. And so then you can just focus on what the differences are between the 4 different methods of putting the squares together and attaching them and picking up stitches and stuff like that. The YouTube channel Breathing Yarn recently did a whole video on their experience with the Stella quilt cushion, and I would highly recommend that video. I watched it. I thought it was great. I will share a link to it. I just think that they were very thorough in explaining sort of like where they like things to focus on and what are important things to look at. And so, like they mentioned, like be really careful with the way that you pick up stitches, because like those are going to be all your edges. And so I was trying to be really careful when I was doing that. Right now it does look kind of wonky, but I'm hoping like as I attach more squares that the edges even out a little bit. I am realizing this isn't going to use as much of these like pretty yarns as I thought it would, because you're really only doing like 4 half triangles for each of my alternating colors. And so I don't know, I'm gonna have to figure out how to use the rest of that yarn because I don't want it to go to waste. I know there is I think there's a blanket version of this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if that's the case, maybe I'll look at that as well, seeing depending on how much yarn I have left at the end. Yeah, overall pretty happy with it. I'll be honest, like I'm not crazy about my garter stitch tension. I think there's just, it's a lot more difficult to have like that real beautiful neatness that you get with stockinette in garter. And so I'm just trying to embrace it. I'm looking at it like this and I'm like, oh, look at that. But realistically, anybody who looks at it from a distance is not going to notice those irregularities, and just be proud of what I make. So yeah, that is my update on this. I do think I need to start weaving in some of these ends because this is going to get crazy. So maybe I'll take a little time to do that before I pick up another square. But yeah, for now, this is my Stella quilt cushion by Laura Penrose. Okay, so that is all I have for today. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of what I'm doing, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will see you in the next one.